Welcome to Bull TV, where we are bullish on Collierville. I'm your host, David Pickler. Bull TV is a monthly show that empowers, educates, and entertains while highlighting the citizens of Collierville who inspire and deliver solutions for a stronger community. Bull TV is presented by Pickler Companies and is proudly produced by the students of Collierville High School. We invite you to watch our show at www.bulltv.show, thebullnetwork.com, and CHS-TV 19. New episodes air on the second Sunday of every month at 3 p.m. Central Time. On today's show, we sit down with Kevin Vaughan. Kevin is the state representative for the 95th District of the Tennessee House of Representatives, and also a small business owner here in Collierville. In the show, we will discuss local politics and the role of the Tennessee Legislature. We'll get an inside look at Kevin's platforms, his committee work, and what drives him day in and day out. We'll also talk about the specific issues that have an impact on Collierville, workforce development, and education. Stay tuned for this look at the unique role of our state representative, how Kevin serves Colliervillians from the state capitol, and the leadership lessons he has learned as a small business owner. Today, I'm joined by Kevin Vaughan, a resident of Collierville for 30 years and a Memphis State University graduate. Kevin was elected to the Tennessee General Assembly in 2017, where he serves as the representative for the 95th House District. He is a registered professional engineer in Tennessee and a licensed real estate broker. In 2004, he founded Township Development Services and Township Realty Services. Kevin is active in community affairs, serving as president of the Collierville Rotary Club. He's also a member of the board of directors of the Collierville Chamber of Commerce and chairman of Collierville's Long Range Planning Committee and trustee at First Baptist Church. Kevin has been recognized as Associate of the Year by the West Tennessee Home Builders Association and was named Legislator of the Year by both the Memphis Area Association of Governments and the Tennessee Association of Building Contractors. Kevin is married to Jonna and has two children, Alexandra and Grayson. Kevin, thank you for joining us on Bull TV.
Thanks for having me, David. I feel like I finally arrived being a guest on Bull TV.
Well, we are glad to have you. So you may be a little bit aware of our format, but we want to get started by really getting to know you. So first question, hard question. In 3 words, who is Kevin Vaughan?
One would be faith. The next would probably be family. Mm-hmm. And the last would be, well, let's just keep it with the alliteration. I'll say fun. I enjoy having a good time.
All right, so we talked a little bit about your background, but tell our viewers a little bit more about your company and about running a small business in Collierville and how that really helped prepare you to better serve Collierville's residents in the legislature and on the school board.
What my company does is we are in the land planning and land development business for individuals who need assistance because, as people may or may not know, the planning process and the development process in Collierville is very meticulous with regards to how things are done, the processes that you must go through, the community buy-in and levels of support and levels of approval that it takes before anything can be constructed in Collierville. I serve as a liaison between those people who are wanting to do things in Collierville and the Collierville town boards and aldermen, as well as sometimes with their bankers, with other investors, to help make sure that their projects get done. We do everything from sometimes you may see me out spreading seeds on a job site to cutting the ribbon. Mm-hmm. And all of this has given me an appreciation for not just the local levels of government, but also for state levels of government, because there are times in my business I'm interfacing with the Department of Transportation, Department of Environment and Conservation. Sometimes I'm dealing with fire departments. It just depends on what I'm doing, and we primarily deal in the Collierville and Germantown areas.
So I'm guessing that with this experience you've had, that you've been able to see both the positives and the negatives of working with government, how government can really work for people, and sometimes how it can be an impediment, and how there are some challenges that you have to overcome.
That's a really fine line for governments to run, because your perspective on a project depends primarily on its proximity to you. Mm-hmm. And so there are things that people say, hey, we need that, but we don't need it here. Mm-hmm. Or it would be great if we had some of this, but gee, what we've got of that already isn't that nice, but I've seen it done better elsewhere. And so there's always this push and pull between citizens and projects in the development sphere, because the one thing that everybody is always long on, and that's opinions.
So with all this experience, how has that really helped you prepare for your role now in the legislature?
It's done by a couple of ways. Number one is I understand how government functions. Because government is made up of people and the structure, and government is empowered by something, whether it be the state constitution, a city charter, however it's been formed. And so whenever you're dealing with the government, you have to understand where their power is derived. Then also you have to look at the ordinances, the laws that have been passed, the purpose behind those, and how those apply to whatever you're doing at the time. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, it's understanding people's perception and being able to deal with the public, being able to bring in their ideas, bring in their concerns, and make it manifest itself in a tangible way, so that your project is something that is successful, not just for the developer, but also for the community.
Wow, that's great. So tell me a little bit about, how did you get started in public service?
Well, David, something you know a lot about, through the Board of Education. Whenever the Collierville schools, or when Shelby County schools absorbed Memphis City schools through a consolidation move, we noticed an immediate, I would say, diminishment of the educational experience that our schools experienced from that, and our community was struggling with that, because for so long, Collierville meant great schools. Mm-hmm. In my instance, I had children who both my children graduated from Collierville schools, so I was vested in it from that standpoint. My wife graduated from Collierville High School, so I was vested in it from that perspective. But also being in the development business and being a promoter of the town in general, I realized that a rising tide raised all boats, and this was a very critical point in our town's history. When you look back on things that have been very important to the town, I can name things while I've been here, is the renovation of the square, when Baptist Hospital moved here, mm-hmm. when FedEx moved here. These are critical points in our town's history where somebody had vision and forethought to make sure that these things were done well. And so I thought, you know what? I'm not sure that we're going to see another opportunity as far as an event that's going to affect our town, and hopefully in a positive manner, as this. And it was something that I wanted to be a part of. And given my profession, local government was frankly not an option because of always having conflicts between my business and this. But education was something that I could champion and get behind, and it didn't hurt that my grandmother was a school teacher for 39 years.
Well, that's great background. And, I remember the words of the great Herman Wright Cox, when he would talk about how public education really helped build Collierville. And
well, he shucked it down to the cob like this. It's the schools, honey. He would always tell you, it's the schools.
You better believe it is. And I'll tell you, I know recently the census numbers came out.
Right.
And then it showed that, while Shelby County was remaining relatively flat, but the suburban communities that all were able to create their own schools have been growing. And I think it is still about those schools.
Oh, I do too. Hey, we wouldn't be in this fabulous facility were it not for that.
You better believe it. It's great. Tell me a little bit about your leadership philosophy in kind of a nutshell. How would you break that down?
Let's see. I would have to say that it's about relationships. I like to consider myself to be, frankly, a benevolent dictator. I like what I like and I want it to be executed, but I want people to feel good about it. But a lot of that derives from having however you establish your relationship to the people that you're trying to impart your vision or the task that you want them to do. It's the most important thing is for them to know what you're about, what you think about them, and how you, and if they feel that you care about them, and how that's going to build to the overall success of the team or the endeavor that you're on. And so I think one of the things that pains me about the digital age that we live in these days is the fact that I think it has been to the diminishment of personal relationships. And that's something that I think is an old school move, but I think it's just as valuable today as it was then. I think that whenever someone is good at managing relationships, it sets them apart from others.
Well, it's a little bit like the old theory of people don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Exactly.
And if people believe that you have their best interest at heart, then they're more than willing to follow that type of leadership.
The other thing that I would have to say is that being a person of principle, being a person of consistent character, that people know that you're able to build up a track record, sometimes which allows you a little grace whenever you make a mistake. But if people can put together your body of work and see that you're consistently trying to do things that are positive, not only for yourself but for others, then that's also a big key to success.
Could not agree more. I mean, I always tell people I try to lead with my heart. And, you may not always agree with all the actions, but if you know where my heart is.
Well, and a lot of it always boils down to who your mentors in life were. What behavior did you see modeled? At what point in your life did you recognize that and say, that's the way I want to treat people? And that's something that I think is critical with regards to the formation of leadership skills.
Perfect, love it. You talked about the fact that you served in the legislature. A lot of people may not know really what is the role of the legislature in their lives. What would be your way of explaining the role of the Tennessee General Assembly in the legislature?
Well, effectively, the Tennessee General Assembly is the board of directors for the state of Tennessee. That's the biggest equivalency that I could draw. We don't implement policy, but we decide policy. It's much the way a board of directors of a corporation is. They're not out on the factory floor doing things, but they know what products they want to have made. And that's what we do in the General Assembly. Frankly, our only job is to pass a balanced budget. That's the one thing that we have to do whenever we go to Nashville, is to develop a balanced budget. And that's submitted to us by the governor, and we shape it the way that we think it needs to be. And because you always can tell anyone's priorities by where they put their money.
Absolutely.
And so that's our role at the General Assembly. There's a lot of banter, a lot of static out there about other things that we do, and people can agree or disagree with the policies we set, but that's effectively what we do.
Perfect, love it. What were the challenges that you faced when you first were elected to the legislature?
Oh gosh, time management. Time management is the biggest issue of all, because we're working legislators. I still have a family to feed, I still have a business to run, but yet we spend 75% of our time between January and May in Nashville taking care of the state's business. So when you consider that, and even when we're in Nashville, you have so many issues to deal with, and people wanting a piece of your time and wanting to try to influence you with regards to a specific issue, then being able to manage your own time and being able to discern who you can trust was the biggest thing for me as a newcomer. I was fortunate that I had some relationships with existing members when I got there who proved to be very beneficial to me.
Well, you talked earlier about mentors. I think in any course of life, it's always good to find those people that you can look up to and that can help you as you navigate your way through.
Absolutely. Hey, and I'd be remiss, one of our common friends, Ron Lawler, was a huge, huge help and influence on me when I first got there.
Well, Ron, clearly probably one of my best friends in life. and I still miss him to this day.
Oh, the state of Tennessee misses him.
Tremendous. You talk about leading by character, leading by his heart. You know, everyone always knew where Ron's heart was, and loved the conversations with him. You know, a comment you made to me years ago when you were considering running for the legislature, and talks a little bit about this issue of time management, was you said, well, I still got to get a lot of hay I got to put in the barn. And I'm sure it's got to be a huge challenge to be a small business owner and being a family man and being a man of faith and all the things you're doing in the community with Rotary and in the city and your job as legislator. How do you find the time to do that?
You become a master at compartmentalization. You're able to quickly get to the heart of a matter. And that's some of my training as an engineer, frankly. I'm a trained problem solver. That's what engineers do. And so when given a set of facts, I typically try to figure out, A, what's the worst thing that can happen, and then B, how do we keep that from happening? Mm-hmm. And so I'm constantly running equations in my mind of where does this go? What is my time frame for doing this in? How do we handle this? How does this get accepted by the most people? And so it's a difficult process. My brother visited me one time my office, and he said, I just don't think frankly, this is a very healthy mental environment, because he sat there for 2 hours and watched me meet with about 15 different people on different issues. And he just said, I don't see how it gets done. The pace is frantic. Mm-hmm. But that's two things it does. So number one is it's exhilarating. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that it does is it builds an understanding of the fact that I'm only going to be in that position for a period of time, because frankly, you only have so much bandwidth to burn and so much fuse to burn while you're there. So this seat is not my seat. I'm not going to be the representative for the 95th district in perpetuity. There will be someone else who comes along, and someone else who takes on those same challenges. I'm merely the caretaker for the period that the people of the 95th district will send me there.
Well, God bless your work that you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about this upcoming legislative session. What do you see as some of your most important priorities that you would like to see advanced in this upcoming session?
Well, in my role as the chairman of the Commerce Committee, we handle business-related items. Mm-hmm. It's going to be, we look at things in everything from banking to utilities to general businesses. We're going to be inundated with COVID mandates. That's going to be where does the balance between an individual's freedoms and the collective good? That's always on the table with regards, or it has been since the pandemic began. So we'll be constantly debating that issue. But from other issues I know that utilities throughout the state are something that's very prevalent on my mind, in the fact that I want to make sure that ratepayers are getting the best service they can get, that utilities are not above the law, mm-hmm. for lack of a better term, or in an unregulated environment, that they're doing the public good. If we're going to allow them to exist as monopolies, are they indeed taking care of the public good? So that's one area that I've got my eye on.
That's fantastic. You know, we talk about politics, and you know, politics are not all glamour and glitter. There are some times when you have all these different voices that want to be heard. You talked about the 15 different meetings, and there are times that things can get a bit heated, a bit contentious. So what has been the style, the process that you have followed to be able to deal with times when things can get contentious, or how you deal when you're personally criticized for the positions that you're taking? How's the way that you've handled that?
Thick skin is indeed an attribute that I have. Number one is I think part of it, particularly when we're dealing with workings within the House where there can be hard-fought partisan battles, mm-hmm. is that having a relationship with someone on the other side allows us in the moment to civilly disagree on an issue, yet not personally insult one another.
Right.
That's a lost art, it seems, these days, in the banter that you see going about on social media, to where people really feel emphatic about an issue. They want to drive home their point, and so they sometimes allow themselves to fall into an uncivil manner or even with a personal attack. In those times, I have to accept those are the times that we live in. Hopefully, I tend to, now I got a little bit of a temper. I'm not gonna lie, it gets under my skin a little bit. But what I tend to do is say, you know what? These people must not know everything that I know on this matter. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the issues, that people get one or two nuggets of fact and believe they've got an issue surrounded. But frankly, these days, there's a lot going on and a lot of information out there that has to be digested and considered and contemplated, and unintended consequences thought through, those type things. And so you just say, hey, it's part of the job, and I don't have to read every one of them.
Yeah, sometimes you have to learn about how much of the social media that you read and some of the other things as well.
It's funny, my brother called me the other day and gave me, he said, I've been reading some of the posts on social media. He said, it's all I can do not to respond to them. I said, please, just turn your computer off. I don't need my big brother coming in to my riding in as my rescuing influence.
I had the same experience when I was on the school board. I mean, there's just times you've got to develop that thick skin. But you talked about the issue of civility, and it seems to me that we have lost the ability to disagree without becoming disagreeable. And it seems like, you always go back to those things we learned in the sandbox, or things we learned in kindergarten. And it seems to me that we would all do well to remember, like George Washington's rules of civility, or just the idea that, that each of us can have the passionate right to that debate, but to be able to do it again, without, resulting to much more contentious conversations.
It's funny, again, the relationships play such a critical role in that. And that's why sometimes when you see things on social media from people that that have chosen to air their grievances in a public way like that, when they could have sent me a text and said, would you call me? I'm concerned about this. So that rubs me the wrong way in some instances. But my friends across the aisle, I'm a Republican, and some of my Democratic friends, they're my social friends. Mm-hmm. I go to hockey games with them. I'll go out to lunch with them. All in an attempt for us to, if I know that person cares about his family and his community, and I care about my family and my community, then suddenly they're not viewed in a prism of, because they disagree with me, they're evil. Mm-hmm. They're just people who have a different perspective, and let the thought and the mathematics rule the day, because at the end, in the public arena, in a legislative form of government, it's all about the math.
Sure.
Do you have the votes? And so just because somebody's going to not maybe perhaps vote for a particular piece of legislation, it's okay. They need to vote their convictions. Mm-hmm. But just because they're doing their job as they see fit doesn't mean that I should personally attack them or ridicule their beliefs. They're just different than mine.
Love it. We talked about the fact that you are a former member of the Collierville Board of Education. I served on the old Shelby County Board of Education, so you and I clearly share a similar passion. What do you believe is the appropriate role for the legislature in improving educational outcomes for the students in Tennessee's public schools?
The way that the legislature shows its concern regarding a subject matter is how much money they budget towards it. So as we look at our state's priorities, we spend more in education and health than we do anything else. Mm-hmm. So it's clearly a priority. The debate can always be held of, is it enough? I know that we try to be innovative with regards to looking for new solutions. I know one of the things that I'm proud of is, and it may seem minor, but we added a new dual enrollment credit last year that frankly saves families college tuition dollars later down the road. That's real tangible benefit. I know that we've been talking about middle college programs and being able to expand these the programs in high schools to where TCAT credit can be gained for CTE curriculum. Those are all things that are real and tangible that can make a difference around people's dinner table to where it affects the family budget, and at the same time creates a beneficial and well-prepared future resident or future citizen of the state of Tennessee.
Well, I couldn't be more supportive of the whole idea of dual enrollment, dual credit, anything we can do to help our children prepare for that future, whether it be for college, for career, really for life. And anything we can do there is great. You talked a little bit about the pandemic and about the impact COVID has had. One of the greatest areas that we've seen is the area, the loss that's occurred in the educational outcomes. I've seen as much as a 30% decline in math scores. So what do you see as the role of the legislature in trying to address the learning loss that's occurred because of the pandemic?
Well, we had the governor called us in a special session last year to pass a slate of bills that he had that was he and the Department of Education's best effort at how to fix it. I think with regards to makeup, utilizing our summertime, and there's been no playbook for the pandemic. It's been something that has, that somebody said it best the other day, said we're living through a science experiment, frankly, and we're trying to gauge our outcomes. What we as a legislature can do is to provide avenues to allow people to, I guess, break outside the norm, to be able to understand that we're in unprecedented times. So maybe unprecedented times come from unprecedented actions, and it really calls us to examine the norms of what we do, and hopefully we can get that back. It's just going to, frankly, when you lose that type of performance, it's going to take a lot of hard work, not only on our staff and faculty, but also on our student bodies. It's something that's going to have to be done through determination and hard work.
I couldn't agree more. Talking about a little different area, what can the legislature do to promote workforce development and career pathways for Tennessee students?
That's one of our big priorities, frankly. That's something that we take very seriously. Workforce development is, our state's growing. We see all the glamour members of the Fortune 500 moving to our state. We're cautiously optimistic about the mega site up I-40 in the Fayette-Haywood area. We're concerned about making sure that employers know that we have a workforce that is prepared for them, has the skill sets they need to do what they do. I look and I see, let me tell you, my friends in the legislature get tired of me bragging on Collierville High School. They're just worn out because I just say, well, I don't know what y'all are talking about. We're already doing that. We're already doing that. Have you considered this? This is what we do at Collierville. And so finally they ran me off the education committee just because they were tired of me bragging on Collierville. And our friends over in Germantown are also doing a great job as well. But workforce development is the key to our state growing and primarily lifting folks, the generation from the lower middle class to more prosperity in our state. That's something that it should be on all of ours. We want everybody to have it better than we had it. I want my children to have it better than I had it, and I had it a heck of a lot better than my parents did through hard work, and that's what everybody wants for the future generations. But this workforce development key and regaining those skills that it takes to be able to fill advanced manufacturing jobs or fill the healthcare jobs that are needed today, that's going to be key to the success of our state moving forward.
Well, you're totally right when we think about what is happening here at Collierville. When we think about the 22 different types of career and vocational type of tracks that a student can pursue here at this school. It is both a state model and a national model. And I know I do the same thing, when I go and have conversations with people, we use Collierville as a model and an example. And we do need to get more schools to take a look at what's happening here because it is an incredible model for the right way to do things.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're very proud of it.
Because, again, of the pandemic, we have also seen a very significant number of Tennessee teachers who have chosen to retire. And I'm sure you agree as I do that one of the most important components of delivering a quality education is ensuring that every child has a highly capable teacher. What do you think we can do from a leadership standpoint, a statewide standpoint, to really attract and retain the best teachers for Tennessee?
Well, I think that a lot of it has to do with job satisfaction, to listen to our existing teachers and figuring out what it is that they enjoy about their job and what they don't. Let's recruit to what teachers like to do. Let's Let's build it, let them have a say in what's happening inside their classroom. Are they teaching or are they testing? If you care about something, you're going to hold somebody accountable for it. So I'm not saying that we need to completely get rid of accountability, but sometimes maybe the emphasis could be diminished some so that we'd free up more teaching time. The other thing that we're doing is looking at licensing with regards to how do we recruit people from out of state? Are we going to make it easier for us to honor the reciprocal license that people may hold for people moving in, for people who may want to travel in from out of state? And then back to the CTE component, maybe changing the requirements for if somebody is a master carpenter, then surely they can teach a carpentry class. If somebody is a retired engineer, surely they can teach math. They have a grasp of math for sure, and maybe we look at how they're employed into the faculty at an institution. Those are things that we're looking at on the state level of saying, how can we make it easier for people with this baseline knowledge and the capacity to care? How do we make them available to be plugged into this workforce? Well,
the idea of alternative licensure is a huge opportunity. We've seen it happen with great success in the community colleges. And we really think about the way that we really need to reimagine public education. Then I think we do need to look outside the box in terms of being able to attract great people into the profession of teaching.
Oh, exactly, because we can all remember, it's funny, think back on my teachers, and I don't remember their teaching methodology. I remember if I learned under them, and I learned if they cared about me. Mm-hmm. That's really what we need.
That's exactly right. What can we in Tennessee do to ensure that our students graduate from Tennessee schools with the financial literacy skills that will allow them to really compete and thrive in our economy?
Wow, it touches on an issue that I have, and I used to, they didn't know what to do with me on the House Education Committee because I was actually an active school board member. And people would come in to our committee meetings and they would present bills, and it would be the greatest thing since pockets on shirts or sliced bread. They would come in and they'd say, we need more of this. And I would look at them and just shake my head and I said, we don't have any more hours in the day. To get that into the classroom, we've got to remove this. Financial literacy, though, is it's a life skill that I see is critical to having well-equipped citizens moving forward. It actually lessens burdens on the state. It lessens burdens in the credit marketplace. It helps people have better lives. It keeps them from bad financial decisions. We had a conversation today with the Tennessee Bankers Association about the unbanked and why 10% of the people in Tennessee are unable to be banked for one reason or another, right, primarily due to poor decision making. Mm-hmm. And so how do we keep that burden out of the pipeline? And that's through more financial literacy education. How we get that accomplished, that's going to be interesting. That's an interesting conundrum. I remember for years I taught it in the, what was it? It was basically a junior achievement program.
Yeah, it is.
That we had in the 8th grade that I would come and I would teach. I did it for 3 years when Collierville Middle School was where the administration building is now, and came in and taught people about the laws of, taught them how to balance a checkbook, mm-hmm, supply and demand, and all kinds of neat economic concepts. But it's something that I sure would be supportive of it, finding its way into the curriculum. We might be able to carve an hour out every now and then to teach folks.
What do you believe are the greatest leadership lessons that you have learned in your role as a state legislator?
Respect. Respect other people's positions. That's one thing you got to do. You have to be able to gather information, understand where people come from, and respect their background, respect their heritage, respect their economic situation, and listen from that perspective. That's one of the biggest things that you can have, and it goes back to treating people the way you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. It's funny, all the different flowery words that we use. We learned a lot of this in kindergarten.
The golden rule.
It is.
It really is. Since we're filming here inside this amazing high school here at Collierville, what would be the message that you would have for the students of Collierville High School when it comes to leadership?
Get involved. you can't be a leader unless you're on the playing field. You've got to get out of your comfort zone and participate in some effort. That allows you to recognize leadership in action. It allows you to get the enjoyment of a mutual goal being satisfied. I think it's something that you can't do. You can't be a wallflower. You can't sit back and watch others do and say, I wish I was a leader. First thing you've got to do is take the risk of getting into the game.
Exactly.
And if you're not willing to get into the game, then it's going to be hard to demonstrate skills that draw other people to you and let other people trust you and allows you to demonstrate what you can do in the field of leadership.
Well, Kevin, you've had an incredible career as a small business owner, as a community leader, as a school board member, now as a state legislator. Years from now, you know, when you look back on your journey, what would you like to be the legacy that is the life of Kevin Vaughan?
Ooh, that's a deep question. I'd say he cared. Cared for his family, cared for his community, cared for his state, cared for others.
That's a great way to do it. Kevin, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Like I said, I'm on TV. This is a big deal for me.
Well, we're thrilled to have you, and thank you for joining us on this edition of Bull TV. As our state representative, the work you are doing for Colliervillians is not only appreciated, but it is necessary in order for our democracy to survive and thrive. We are honored to have an elected official who listens to the people, understands our concerns, and is our advocate in Nashville. Thank you again for your service and for telling your story on Bull TV.
Again, thanks for having me, and I hope we don't crash the ratings.
The great American anthropologist Margaret Mead described the importance of public service when she said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." The American experiment in representative democracy has always been dependent on the dedication of its citizens to serve, to lead, and to engage. In his Gettysburg Address, President Abraham Lincoln characterized our government as of the people, by the people, for the people. As citizens of this great nation, each of us has a responsibility. Whether you choose to seek elective office, engaged in community service or civic leadership, or whether you express your voice by exercising that most fundamental franchise, your right to vote, each of us has an essential role to play. Together, we can keep the flame of democracy burning brightly. Together, we can have the government that reflects the will of its people. And together, we can strengthen the fabric of our society by engaged citizenship and dedication to the ideal of freedom. And that is my 2 cents. We invite you to join us next month as we sit down with Collierville's Chief of Police, Dale Lane. With over 34 years of public safety experience, including involvement in the Sheriff's SWAT team and having a role on the Governor's Law Enforcement Counterterrorism Support Element, Chief Lane has incredible leadership skills he implements daily for the citizens of Collierville. In the show, we will discuss one of Collierville's most attractive features when it comes to people moving here: safety. The Collierville Police Department is a shining example of service over self, and our law enforcement officers have created one of the safest places to live in Tennessee. Chief Lane and I will discuss the department's strategies, including a robust neighborhood watch network, as well as working with the community to address quality of life issues. Join us as we take a deep dive into Chief Lane's leadership philosophies, the department's data-driven principles, and how the CPD has helped make Collierville a wonderful place to live, work, and play. Until next time, I'm your host, David Pickler. Thank you for watching Bull TV, where together we deliver solutions for a stronger community.